10. Bata Caves, East Java, the gateway to darkness. Hidden in the lush, misty forests of East Java, the Bata Caves stand like silent sentinels, ancient and unforgiving. These limestone caverns, carved by time itself, are breathtaking by day, but when the sun sets, the darkness creeps in, and the caves take on an entirely different life. Locals whisper that the caves are a portal to another realm. They speak of vanishing villagers, disembodied voices, and shadow figures that move through the tunnels like hunters in the night. Travelers have entered the caves, never to return, their final screams echoing through the labyrinthine passages. Long before the caves gained their haunted reputation, they were believed to be sacred grounds. Ancient Javanese tribes used the caves for ritualistic ceremonies, honoring the spirits of the earth. It's said that animal sacrifices were common, and sometimes, when the harvest failed or disease spread, they offered something even darker: human lives. The tribe believed the caves housed a guardian spirit, a vengeful entity that demanded offerings in exchange for protection. But the more blood that was spilled, the more insatiable the spirit became. Eventually, the tribe vanished, leaving only their legends behind. And that's when the hauntings began. As the years passed, the Bata Caves became a forbidden place. Those who dared explore its depths often returned changed, if they returned at all. Locals reported hearing chanting echoing from the caves at night, even though no one had entered for decades. Some claimed to see figures in ceremonial masks flickering in and out of the shadows. Others described red handprints appearing on the cave walls, fresh and wet, as if someone, or something, had just been there. The most chilling stories, however, come from those who have spent the night near the caves. Campers have reported waking up to find their friends missing, their belongings strewn across the forest, and the sound of heavy breathing just outside their tents. One particularly harrowing tale involves a group of college students who entered the caves for an adventure. They laughed off the legends, treating the exploration as a thrill-seeking challenge. But their laughter turned to terror when one of them, a girl named Rena, claimed she saw a man standing in the tunnel, his body twisted and contorted, with empty eye sockets dripping with blood. Panicked, they tried to escape, but the exit was gone, replaced by an endless stretch of darkness. Their flashlights flickered and died, one by one, leaving them blind and defenseless. Hours later, local search teams found them huddled at the cave entrance, catatonic and shaking, their faces scratched as if clawed by human hands. Rena was never found. The Bata Caves are believed to be a spiritual vortex, a place where the barrier between the living and the dead is perilously thin. The spirits of those sacrificed in ancient rituals are thought to roam the tunnels, forever trapped in the darkness. And the guardian spirit, still hungry for blood, lures people inside, feeding off their fear and suffering. Local shamans have tried to seal the caves with protective spells, but they claim the entity is too powerful. It twists and corrupts the land, spreading its influence beyond the cave's mouth. Even standing near the entrance, people have reported hearing their own names whispered from within. As if the cave itself is calling them. Today, the Bata Caves are a forbidden landmark, a place avoided by locals but sought after by thrill-seekers and paranormal investigators. Yet those who enter rarely stay long. The overwhelming sense of dread, the feeling of being watched, and the constant echo of phantom footsteps drive most people back to safety. But sometimes, someone doesn't come back. And when they don't, locals say the caves grow quieter, as if the entity has been fed. 9. Trinyan Village, Bali, the Cemetery of the Dead. Deep within the shadow of Mount Batur, on the shores of Lake Batur, lies a village unlike any other in Bali, Trinyan Village. This ancient place is home to the Bali Aga people, a community that holds tightly to their pre-Hindu traditions. But what truly sets this village apart is its bone-chilling cemetery, where bodies are left in the open air, resting beneath a sacred tree. Yet, the unsettling part isn't just the sight of skulls and bones scattered across the ground. It's the stories, the whispers of spirits, the apparitions of the dead, and the feeling that something unseen watches from the forest. Trunyan village is one of Bali's oldest settlements, dating back to ancient times. The villagers follow traditions that predate Hindu influence, centered around the Teru Menyen tree, a rare tree that emits a fragrant aroma, believed to mask the scent of decay. Instead of cremating or burying their dead, the people of Trunyan would place the bodies beneath the tree, letting nature slowly reclaim them. Skulls and bones were then arranged neatly as offerings to the spirits. This practice was seen as a way to honor the dead, allowing them to return to the earth naturally. But over time, something shifted. People began to report strange occurrences, shadows moving through the forest, voices whispering in the breeze, and cold hands brushing against their skin. It was as if the spirits of the dead had never truly left. The first whispers of hauntings came from villagers who ventured too close to the cemetery at night. They described seeing figures in white, standing silently among the trees. At first, people believed these were manifestations of the spirits, peaceful souls lingering near their resting place. But as time passed, the encounters grew more terrifying. Boatmen ferrying tourists across the lake claimed to see hands reaching up from the water, as if drowned spirits were trying to climb aboard. Others heard unseen footsteps echoing along the shoreline, always following them, but never revealing themselves. Some visitors reported feeling an overwhelming sense of dread upon stepping into the cemetery, as if something malevolent was watching. Cameras malfunctioned, batteries drained, and photographs often revealed ghostly faces among the bones. One of the most chilling encounters happened to a tourist couple visiting the village. They wandered into the cemetery, curious but disrespectful, laughing and posing for pictures with the skulls. That night, back at their hotel, the woman woke up screaming, claiming to see a rotting face staring at her from the corner of the room. Her boyfriend brushed it off as a nightmare, until he woke up the next morning to find scratches down his back, scratches that looked like bone fingers. In another incident, a local fisherman who often crossed the lake at dusk told of a woman in a white dress standing on the water. Thinking she was a lost tourist, he rowed toward her, only to see her sink beneath the surface without making a ripple. When he returned to the village and told the elders, they simply nodded and said, "She belongs to the lake now." The Bali Aga people believe the spirits linger because they are bound to the land, tied to the Teru Menyen tree and the rituals surrounding it. The tree is thought to be a portal between the living and the dead, and disturbing the bones or disrespecting the cemetery is said to anger the spirits, causing them to wander. It's believed that some souls, especially those who died violently or tragically, are unable to move on, becoming restless entities that haunt the living. Locals conduct ceremonies to appease these spirits, but even those rituals don't always work. The forest, the lake, and the village itself feel like a liminal space, a thin veil where the realm of the dead constantly brushes against the world of the living. Today, Trunyan village draws in the brave and the curious, eager to witness death up close. But those who visit are warned to show respect, to walk quietly among the bones, never mock the dead, and never take anything from the cemetery. Because in Trunyan, the line between life and death is so blurred, you might bring something back with you. And once a spirit attaches itself, it may never let go. 8. Ankol Bridge, Jakarta, the ghost of the lost maiden. In the heart of Jakarta, where the city hums with life, there lies a place shrouded in darkness and mystery, Ankol Bridge. By day, it's an ordinary crossing, but by night, it becomes the stage for one of Indonesia's most chilling ghost stories. The tale of the Lady of Ankol has haunted this bridge for centuries, drawing in the curious, the fearless, and the unlucky. The legend traces back to the 18th century, during the Dutch colonial era. The area around what is now Ankol was a quiet coastal village. Life was simple, but for one young woman, it was anything but peaceful. Her name was Miriam, a beautiful, kind-hearted girl who worked as a servant. But her beauty caught the eye of a wealthy Dutch landlord, a man known for his cruelty and arrogance. He became obsessed with Miriam, determined to claim her as his own, no matter the cost. Miriam refused his advances, but the landlord wouldn't take no for an answer. He sent his men to capture her, dragging her toward his estate. Desperate to escape a life of misery, Miriam broke free, running through the dark, tangled woods. She reached the bridge, her heart pounding, hope just within her grasp, but the landlord's men caught up to her. In the struggle, Miriam was killed, her body discarded into the river below. And just like that, her life was over. But her story was far from finished. Not long after Miriam's death, strange occurrences plagued the area. Fishermen reported seeing a woman in white, walking along the riverbank, crying softly. Travelers crossing the bridge claimed to see her standing by the water, her face pale and sorrowful, her clothes soaked and tattered. As time passed, her appearances became more sinister. Motorists reported a woman suddenly appearing in front of their vehicles, causing them to swerve and crash. Pedestrians would feel a cold hand brush against theirs, only to turn and find no one there. Locals began to avoid the bridge at night, fearing they might encounter the Lady of Ankal, and that her tragic death might somehow become their own. One of the most famous encounters happened to a cab driver working a late shift. He picked up a young woman near the bridge, dressed in old-fashioned white clothes. She said little during the ride, only giving directions in a soft, distant voice. When they reached her destination, the driver turned around to find the back seat empty, except for a pool of water where she had been sitting. Another terrifying incident involved a security guard patrolling the area. He claimed he saw a woman crying by the bridge, her shoulders shaking with grief. When he approached to help, she turned to face him, her eyes hollow and her face twisted with rage. She screamed, and the guard fainted on the spot. He woke up hours later, his body ice cold, with bruises on his arms that looked like fingerprints. Paranormal experts believe that Miriam's spirit lingers because her death was violent and unjust. Spirits like hers are often trapped, unable to move on until they find peace or justice. Some say she searches for someone to save her, replaying her final moments again and again. Others believe she seeks revenge, lashing out at men who remind her of the landlord who destroyed her life. Despite attempts to cleanse the area with rituals and prayers, the sightings continue. It's as if Ankal Bridge itself is a scar on the land, a place where pain and loss echo through time. Today, Ankal Bridge still stands, connecting the past and the present. People cross it daily, unaware of the ghostly figure that may be watching from the shadows. But for those who know the story, every gust of wind, every ripple in the water, feels like a warning. 7. The abandoned Bedugul Taman Rekrisi Hotel, Bali, the Ghost Palace. Nestled in the misty mountains of Bedugul, Bali, lies a crumbling relic of forgotten luxury, the Bedugul Taman Rekrisi Hotel, more chillingly known as the Ghost Palace Hotel. What was once envisioned as a lavish retreat has now decayed into a haunting shell, where nature and the supernatural have claimed dominion. Locals warn that the spirits who linger there are restless, and they don't take kindly to trespassers. The Bedugul Taman Rekrisi Hotel was built in the 1990s, a sprawling complex designed to attract Bali's wealthiest visitors. Overlooking lush forests and serene lakes, it promised a paradise escape. But something went terribly wrong. Legend has it the owner, a wealthy businessman, made a deal with dark forces to ensure the hotel's success. But when construction workers began dying mysteriously, rumors spread like wildfire. Some fell from scaffolding, while others were found lifeless in their beds, faces twisted in terror. Just before the hotel was set to open, funding dried up. The businessmen vanished, and the resort was abandoned overnight. But locals claim it wasn't the lack of money that stopped the project, it was the curse. As the jungle slowly devoured the hotel, the spirits moved in. Tourists who stumbled across the site reported hearing phantom footsteps and seeing shadow figures watching them from broken windows. The most infamous spirit is believed to be a woman in white, thought to be a worker who died during construction. She's said to wander the hallways, her eyes hollow and blackened, her mouth stretched into a ghastly grin. Those who see her either fall violently ill or are plagued by nightmares for weeks afterward. Locals refuse to go near the property, claiming the hotel is a gateway for lost souls, a place where the living and the dead coexist. One chilling encounter comes from a group of explorers who stayed the night. They filmed their adventure, laughing off the hotel's grim reputation. But their laughter died when they heard a child's voice echoing through the halls, even though they were alone. Their footage showed doors slamming shut on their own and distorted faces in the mirrors. But the most terrifying moment came at 3 a.m., when they woke to find one of their friends missing. They searched the hotel for hours, only to find him standing in a corner, unresponsive, tears streaming down his face. When he finally spoke, he whispered, "She wouldn't let me leave." Theories swirl about why the ghost palace remains haunted. Some say the souls of the dead workers are trapped within the walls, bound by the blood spilled during construction. Others believe the owner's curse still lingers, feeding the hotel's dark energy. Whatever the truth, the Bedugul Taman Rekrisi Hotel has become a beacon for the supernatural. Even during the day, visitors report feeling watched, and many say their phones die or cameras malfunction the moment they try to document the ruins. It's as if the hotel itself doesn't want to be remembered. Today, the Ghost Palace remains a popular spot for the brave and the foolish. But locals warn visitors to never take anything from the site, not even a pebble. They say the spirits attach themselves to those who disturb their resting place, following them home and tormenting them relentlessly. 6. Gunung Kawi, the Haunted Valley of Kings. Deep in the lush jungles of Bali, hidden among ancient trees and winding rivers, lies a sacred site carved into the stone cliffs, Gunung Kawi. It's a breathtaking place, with towering rock-cut shrines that have stood for nearly 1,000 years. But beneath the serene beauty, the air hums with something darker, a lingering presence, a shadow of tragedy and betrayal. Built in the 11th century, Gunung Kawi is believed to be the royal tomb complex of King Anak Wongsu and his family. The shrines, carved directly into the cliff face, were meant to honor the king's ancestors and provide a gateway to the afterlife. It was a place of reverence, where priests and devotees came to offer prayers and seek blessings from the spirits of the ancient rulers. But Balinese folklore tells a more sinister version of history. According to legend, the king's palace was filled with jealousy, deceit, and murder. The king's enemies plotted against him, and some stories claim he was poisoned by his own bloodline. The royal family died in grief and rage, their spirits bound to the land. The valley became a tomb, not just for their bodies, but for their restless souls. For centuries, Gunung Kawi remained a place of worship, but strange occurrences began to plague the site. Monks who meditated there reported hearing whispers in an ancient tongue, echoing through the valley at dusk. Some claimed to see shadowy figures moving through the trees, while others encountered ghostly apparitions kneeling before the shrines. Villagers who lived nearby avoided the area after dark. They spoke of a woman in white seen wandering the stone steps, her face hidden beneath a veil. She would silently beckon travelers to follow her, leading them deeper into the forest, never to be seen again. It's said that those who disrespect the site, or dare to mock the ancient carvings, fall ill or suffer terrible accidents shortly after leaving the valley. Locals believe it's the spirits of the royal family, exacting revenge on those who dishonor their resting place. One chilling tale tells of a photographer who visited Gunung Kawi to capture the beauty of the ancient shrines. He stayed late into the evening, mesmerized by the site's mystical aura. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, he noticed a man dressed in royal garments, standing by one of the shrines. Thinking it was a reenactor, he raised his camera, but the figure vanished the moment he snapped the photo. When he developed the pictures, his blood ran cold. The last image showed the same figure, now standing directly behind him, his eyes hollow, his mouth twisted in a silent scream. Another story comes from a group of tourists who dared each other to perform a ritual at the site. They laughed as they made offerings, mocking the legends. But as they left the valley, one of them slipped and fell down the stone staircase, breaking her leg in multiple places. The others claimed they heard a woman's laughter echoing through the cliffs, though no one else was there. Many believe that Gunung Kawi is a spiritual gateway, a thin veil between the mortal world and the afterlife. The shrines are said to trap the spirits of the royal family, binding them to the valley for eternity. Local shamans occasionally perform cleansing rituals to calm the restless souls, but the hauntings never fully disappear. Even today, visitors leave offerings of flowers, coins, and food to appease the spirits and seek their protection. But those who come with ill intentions or disrespect for the dead often leave with more than they bargained for, a piece of the valley that follows them home. Gunung Kawi remains one of Bali's most captivating sights, a stunning monument to a lost dynasty. But it's not just history carved into the cliffs, it's a legacy of betrayal, grief, and lingering spirits. 5. Bandung Medical Center, the hospital where the dead still linger. In the heart of Bandung, Indonesia, stands an abandoned building that looms like a forgotten tombstone against the sky. It was once a place of healing, a hospital meant to save lives. But now, it's a labyrinth of decay and shadows, where whispers echo through empty corridors and unseen eyes watch from the darkness. This is the Bandung Medical Center, a place where death lingers, and the spirits of those who died in agony refuse to move on. The Bandung Medical Center was built during Indonesia's colonial period, originally serving as a Dutch hospital. It was a state-of-the-art facility for its time, treating soldiers, civilians, and the sick during times of war and unrest. But as history turned bloody, the hospital became a place of suffering. During World War II, the hospital saw an influx of critically wounded patients. Some died in overcrowded wards, while others perished during painful surgeries without anesthesia. Doctors worked tirelessly, but many patients never left the hospital alive. The building became a graveyard long before it was abandoned. After the hospital was shut down, the building fell into ruin. But as the walls crumbled, the spirits remained. Locals reported strange lights flickering in the windows at night, as if the hospital had come back to life. People walking past heard faint cries and screams, as if the dying patients were still begging for help. Adventurous ghost hunters and thrill-seekers who dared to enter the abandoned hospital spoke of chilling encounters. They saw apparitions of nurses in blood-stained uniforms, pushing empty wheelchairs through the halls. Some claimed to see shadow figures darting around corners or standing silently at the end of corridors, watching with hollow eyes. But the most terrifying reports involved the operating room, the epicenter of the haunting. People who entered the room claimed to hear metallic clanging, like surgical instruments being laid on a tray. One visitor swore they saw an invisible force slam the operating table against the wall, as if a vengeful spirit was reenacting its final moments. One of the most famous encounters comes from a group of college students who decided to explore the hospital at midnight. They joked and laughed, recording their adventure for social media. But the laughter stopped when they heard the unmistakable sound of gurney wheels squeaking down the hallway, even though no one else was in the building. Terrified, they ran for the exit, but one student collapsed before they could escape. His friends dragged him outside, and when he woke up, he was trembling and incoherent. He claimed he'd seen a ghostly doctor, face pale as death, standing over him with a rusty scalpel. The spirit had pressed down on his chest, and he swore he felt the cold blade cutting into his skin. The haunting of Bandung Medical Center is believed to be tied to the patients who died in agony and the doctors who couldn't save them. The spirits are said to be caught in a loop of suffering, unable to accept their deaths. The nurses wander the halls, still tending to patients who are no longer there. The surgeons relive failed operations, trying to save people who are already gone. Local shamans have attempted cleansing rituals, but the hauntings persist. It's as if the building itself has become a vessel for pain, a place where the boundary between life and death has disintegrated. Today, the Bandung Medical Center is a magnet for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts. Some say it's the most haunted place in West Java, a location where the air feels heavy with despair. And those who've been brave enough to step inside often leave with something more than just a scary story, they leave with a lingering sense of being followed. 4. Pelabuhan Ratu, the haunted shore of the Queen of the South Sea. On the rugged coast of West Java, where the waves crash violently against jagged rocks, lies a seaside town shrouded in myth and mystery, Palabuhan Ratu. Its name means Queen's Harbor, and for centuries, locals have whispered of a powerful spirit who rules the waters, Nyai Roro Kidul, the Queen of the South Sea. This is not just a beach town. It's a place where legend and reality blur, and the sea itself seems hungry for souls. Palabuhan Ratu has always been a place of beauty and danger. Its turquoise waters and lush cliffs drew travelers and fishermen alike, but the sea's violent temperament often turned deadly. Massive waves swallowed boats whole, and sailors disappeared without a trace. The locals believed these deaths were no accident, they were offerings to Nyai Roro Kidul, a vengeful sea spirit said to drag people to her underwater kingdom. The legend dates back to the 16th century, during the reign of the Mataram Sultanate. According to myth, Nyai Roro Kidul was once a beautiful Javanese princess cursed by black magic. She threw herself into the ocean, where she transformed into a powerful spirit, eternally tied to the sea. She became a queen, a goddess who ruled the southern waters with jealousy and wrath. As the town grew, so did the disappearances. Fishermen who sailed too far never returned. Tourists wading into the waves were swept away by sudden currents. And one detail tied all these deaths together: the victims were wearing green, the queen's sacred color. Locals believe wearing green along the beach enrages Nyai Roro Kidul, who mistakes the color for her royal garments and pulls the wearer into the depths to serve her in death. The haunting wasn't limited to the water. People staying in seaside hotels reported waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of heavy footsteps and the scent of frangipani flowers, the queen's signature fragrance. Some claimed to see a beautiful woman in a flowing green dress standing on their balconies, gazing out at the ocean before vanishing into mist. Countless stories circulate about encounters with the Sea Queen. One of the most infamous tales is of a tourist couple who ignored the warnings and swam in the sea wearing green swimwear. The woman was dragged underwater by a sudden wave, her body never found. The man survived but returned to shore with deep scratches along his back, as if something with claws had tried to hold him down. Local fishermen tell stories of seeing a green light glowing beneath the waves on stormy nights, a sign that Nyai Roro Kidul is watching. Some even claim to have seen her riding a massive wave on a ghostly white horse, her face obscured by a veil, her eyes glowing like embers. One fisherman swore he once heard a woman's voice calling his name from the sea. He turned to look, and standing on the water was the queen herself, her hand outstretched. He fainted on the spot, and when his friends revived him, he had aged 10 years overnight. If you visit Palabuhan Ratu, you'll find Samudra Beach Hotel, which keeps a room permanently reserved for Nyai Roro Kidul, room 308. The room is an eerie shrine, filled with green furnishings, flower offerings, and paintings of the Sea Queen. People leave gifts, hoping to appease her spirit. Some even sleep in the room, hoping to catch a glimpse of the Queen herself. Many wake up with bruises or scratches, as if something unseen had touched them in their sleep. Today, Palabuhan Ratu is both a tourist destination and a spiritual hotspot. Locals hold rituals and ceremonies to honor Nyai Roro Kidul, leaving offerings on the beach to keep her wrath at bay. But the queen is still there. The sea still takes lives. And every time someone drowns, the town falls silent, knowing the queen has claimed another soul for her kingdom. 3. Jeruk Purut Cemetery, Jakarta's haunting ground of the headless priest. Deep in the heart of Jakarta, hidden beneath a canopy of trees, lies Jeruk Purut Cemetery, a resting place where the dead refuse to sleep. By day, it's a quiet graveyard, but by night, it transforms into a realm of shadows, where restless spirits roam and an ominous figure stalks the living. This is not just a cemetery, it's a portal to Indonesia's darkest ghost stories. Jeruk Purut Cemetery was established during the Dutch colonial era, serving as a burial ground for Jakarta's growing population. Its ancient tombstones and overgrown paths tell stories of lives lost to war, disease, and tragedy. But the haunting of Jeruk Purut is tied to a single chilling legend: one that has terrified locals for decades. The story begins with a Catholic priest who, according to legend, was beheaded during a period of religious turmoil. It said his body was laid to rest in the cemetery, but his spirit never found peace. Soon after the priest's death, visitors to the cemetery began reporting terrifying encounters. They claimed to see a figure in priest's robes, carrying his severed head in his hands, wandering aimlessly through the graveyard. He was often accompanied by a large black dog with glowing red eyes, an ominous harbinger of doom. The most disturbing detail: the priest never seemed to know he was dead. He would walk through the cemetery as if still tending to his congregation, until he turned to reveal the bleeding stump where his head should have been. Brave souls who visited the cemetery at night tell chilling stories of inexplicable encounters. Some say they've heard the sound of heavy footsteps crunching on dead leaves, only to turn around and find nothing but empty darkness. Others report seeing the shadowy figure of the headless priest wandering between the graves, his head cradled like a grotesque lantern. One particularly horrifying tale involves a group of friends who decided to test their courage by visiting the cemetery after midnight. They laughed and took selfies, until one of them spotted a figure in the background of a photo. It was the priest, standing just feet away, his headless body facing the camera. The friends fled in terror, and one of them fell sick for weeks, plagued by nightmares of the priest standing at the foot of their bed. The priest may be the cemetery's most famous ghost, but he isn't the only spirit lingering there. Visitors often report hearing soft whispers coming from empty tombs, feeling unseen hands grab their clothes, and even spotting ghostly apparitions of children playing among the graves. Some believe these spirits are souls who died tragically young, forever tied to the place where their bodies rest. Perhaps the most terrifying phenomenon is the cemetery's tendency to shift in space. People say the layout seems to change after dark, familiar paths disappear, graves they passed minutes ago vanish, and visitors become hopelessly lost, as if the spirits themselves are toying with them. Despite its haunted reputation, Jeruk Purit remains an active cemetery, and locals still come to pay respects to their loved ones. But many refuse to visit after sunset, fearing the veil between the living and the dead grows thin in those twilight hours. 2. Taman Mini Indonesia Indah, where culture meets the supernatural. In the bustling city of Jakarta, Indonesia, lies a sprawling cultural park known as Taman Mini Indonesia Indah, or Beautiful Indonesia in Miniature Park. By day, it's a vibrant showcase of Indonesia's diverse heritage, but when the sun sets, the park takes on a far more sinister atmosphere. Beneath its picturesque surface lurks a history of tragedy, lost spirits, and chilling encounters that have made it one of Jakarta's most haunted locations. Taman Mini was the vision of First Lady Tien Soeharto, who wanted to create a space where visitors could experience the beauty of Indonesia's culture all in one place. The park opened in 1975, featuring replicas of traditional houses, temples, and landmarks from across the archipelago. It was a place of joy, learning, and national pride. But what many don't know is that the land itself carried a heavy burden long before the park was built. According to locals, the area was once the site of violent conflicts and mysterious deaths. Some say the spirits of those who perished never left, and the park's construction may have disturbed their restless souls. It didn't take long for eerie tales to spread among park workers and visitors. Employees reported hearing strange noises echoing through the traditional houses after dark, disembodied voices, footsteps, and even children's laughter when no one was around. Some claimed to see shadow figures darting between the buildings or staring out from the windows of empty structures. The most unsettling rumors revolve around the rumah adat, or traditional houses. People believe that spirits, tied to the objects and relics inside, roam freely. In particular, the rumah Sumatra is infamous for sightings of a ghostly woman in white, her face obscured by long, black hair, silently watching visitors before vanishing into thin air. Tourists have reported feeling sudden chills and an overwhelming sense of dread in certain areas, even on Jakarta's hottest days. Some claim they were touched or pushed by invisible hands. A few unlucky visitors even left the park with mysterious scratches on their skin, marks they couldn't explain. One chilling story tells of a group of teenagers who snuck into the park after hours for a late-night adventure. They laughed, took pictures, and explored the quiet grounds. But when they reviewed their photos later, they found something horrifying: a pale figure standing behind them in every shot, a twisted grin stretched across its face. Security guards patrolling the area at night also share their own experiences. One guard swears he saw a headless apparition wandering near the lake, only to disappear when he called out. Another refused to patrol alone after hearing his name whispered from the darkness, a voice that sounded eerily like his own. Despite its haunting reputation, Taman Mini remains a beloved landmark. But those who visit can't ignore the heavy energy that clings to certain corners of the park. Some believe the spirits are simply protecting their cultural legacy. Others think they're trapped, forever bound to the land where their lives were cut short. 1. Lawang Sewu, Semarang, the haunted palace of 1,000 doors. In the heart of Semarang, Indonesia, stands an architectural masterpiece, Lawang Sewu, which translates to 1,000 doors. Its towering colonial facade and endless rows of doors hide a dark, chilling history that still echoes through its halls. Built by the Dutch in 1904, Lawang Sewu served as the headquarters of the Dutch East Indies Railway Company. It was a symbol of progress and modernity, showcasing intricate European design. But beneath its grandeur, the building harbored shadowy secrets. During World War II, the Japanese seized control, turning Lawang Sewu into a brutal military base. The basement transformed into a makeshift prison, where prisoners were tortured and executed. The walls soaked up the agony of countless souls, and their pain lingered long after the war ended. After the war, Lawang Sewu stood as a hollow shell of its former self. Locals began whispering about strange occurrences. People walking by late at night heard muffled screams, footsteps echoing from empty hallways, and the distant sound of chains dragging against the floor. The basement, where so many prisoners had died, became a hotspot of paranormal activity. It wasn't long before the abandoned structure earned its reputation as one of the most haunted places in Indonesia. Visitors report seeing shadow figures lurking behind the endless doors, disappearing the moment they turn to look. Some claim to feel cold, invisible hands brushing against their skin, while others hear faint cries reverberating through the walls. The most infamous spirit is said to be a Dutch woman in a blood-stained white dress, believed to have taken her own life in the building. She appears in mirrors, her hollow eyes following anyone who dares enter the room she died in. Perhaps the most terrifying encounters happen in the basement. Tourists brave enough to venture down often report an overwhelming sense of dread, as if they're being watched. A few have fainted after seeing apparitions of soldiers with twisted, contorted faces, silently screaming as they relive their final moments. Despite its haunted reputation, Lawang Sewu draws visitors from all over the world. Paranormal investigators, thrill seekers, and curious travelers flock to experience the supernatural energy firsthand. Some leave shaken, swearing they'll never return. Others leave with eerie photographs capturing shadowy figures in the background, proof of the restless spirits that call Lawang Sewu home. It's more than just a building, it's a gateway to the past, a place where the veil between the living and the dead feels paper thin.